2146 is your SMS line at Metropole TVKE across all your social media platforms. Hashtag Business AM talk to us. This is your economic review. Thank you very much for making time for us. Good. This morning, we are joined by Washington Ndegam, is the chairman of Bima Intermediaries Association of Kenya. Also joined by George Munga, managing partner, AMG Kenya, and Adelaide Odhiambo, CEO Blue Wave, to take us through some of the biggest headlines that you are waking up to this morning. All right, let's get to it. Energy Regulatory Authority, EPRA, now indicates that the fuel cost levy will hit a 13-month high, which will translate into an increase in the cost of energy in the country, even as the economy comes to terms with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. EPRA, in its latest data released on Friday, shows that the fuel cost charge, that is the FCC for January, is 2 shillings and 58 cents per kilowatt hour, becoming the highest number since December 2019, when it was 2 shillings and 65 cents per kilowatt hour. This is a 2 cents rise from last December, adding to the cost of consumption of electricity amid the depressed earnings and limited sources of income due to the pandemic. Even as EPRA increased diesel prices by 4 shillings and 57 cents per litre on the back of high international crude oil prices, which have shot to $49.99 a barrel. That's the introduction. Now, the cost of energy has been an ever-growing concern for the Kenyan economy. How will this affect the cost of production and investment environment in the country? Now, George, I want to ask you that question, but then I will take this angle as well, that it looks as if we are always on the receiving end when it comes to the cost of energy in the country. What sort of response should we expect from our economy, especially from our government, in relation to where we're coming from, the coronavirus pandemic? That 2021 would be viewed as a year to recover, but it doesn't seem so. At small energy again, much more cost of energy as we start 2021.
For that, I would want to start by reiterating that energy is a big contributor when it comes to our productivity as an economy. You realize that one of the key agendas for Kenya is manufacturing. And for you to ensure that your manufacturing is up to speed, cost of energy must be a factor that has to be managed very well. Remember, Elijah, that we are in a global economy, meaning that a manufacturer in Kenya is competing against a manufacturer in China, a manufacturer in the US, a manufacturer in South Africa, a manufacturer in Egypt. And all these manufacturers are targeting one group of customers or one group of clientele that will be looking at the cost of that product when it goes into the market. So, Elijah, if the cost of production is high, then it means that we are not going to be competitive at the end of the day. Remember, cost of energy almost contributes 30% of the ultimate cost of production. So if you take that cost by even one percentage point, then it affects not only the profitability of that company, but also the cost of that product eventually hits the market. Our cost of energy in Kenya, Elijah, has not been managed very well over the recent past, as you are aware. Remember, there are several levies that are factored in when EPRA is calculating the cost of kilowatt hour in Kenya. In fact, apart from the consumption that as a consumer you do for every month, there is the fuel cost adjustment, there is the inflationary adjustment, there is the Warma levy, there is ERC, and then there is the VAT at 16%. So it makes our cost quite high at the end of the day. What I would want to see, Elijah, is that even if we are to adjust our cost of energy, then we must adjust it in line with what our competitors or the nations that surround us are doing. But that has not been the case. Elijah, remember in the recent past, I think in 2020, cost of fuel in the global market has been quite reduced, and therefore it beats logic that at such a time when we are supposed to be coming out of a pandemic, we are increasing our cost per kilowatt hour in terms of energy cost in the market. So I think this needs a review, Elijah.
Yes.
And if this is not done in time, then you realize that our productivity goes down, or our manufacturing concerns are not able to compete effectively in the market, Elijah.
Yes.
I think that is something that, that the government must take into account. And I don't know what the Kenya Association of Manufacturers is doing about it. I think this is one of the areas that they need to lobby the central government in order to come to a compromise, so that they carry something that they can work with, and they can push into the market so that they become competitive at the end of the day, Elijah.
Yes, George, I want to point you out to the data that was shown this morning when it comes to exactly our energy or fuel costs in the country. And if you look at that, then all the way to 2020, you're going to realize that, well, we've never really settled on what has been, what we kind of have, it's as if we don't have a say. And it looks as if we really do not try as much as possible to sort of regulate or have a way in which we can say that in the country we have a system in which our fuel prices or the cost of energy is sort of at a specific level. Because if you look at that data, it's not a graph headed anyway. It keeps on rising and falling. Do we have a say? Because what I'm saying is that now the international energy prices, they're also sort of going up now because we don't know the economies are sort of coming to terms with the COVID-19 pandemic. We're talking about $49.99 a barrel. Do we always have to be on the receiving end, or is there something that we can do locally as a government?
Elijah, I want to draw your attention to what used to happen in the telecoms industry before privatization.
Yes.
Remember, Telecom Kenya was the sole provider of that service in Kenya, and they were allowed to price their product the way they like to do it at that time. What I'm inferring to is that sometimes you need the forces of demand and supply to prevail in the market, so that some of these things can be checked. There's so many players in the energy subsector, but KPLC still is a monopoly when it comes to distribution, and therefore they can do whatever they like when it comes to pricing that product in the market. And in fact, when you have a monopoly, Elijah, then you allow inefficiencies in the operations. They would want to load their inefficiencies in the eventual bill that you get as an individual, or that a company gets as a manufacturing concern. So my take is that as we go into the future, this is something that as Kenya we need to start thinking of. How do we privatize electricity production, and how do we privatize electricity distribution, so that the forces of market, the forces of demand and supply can operate in that market. As it is today, Elijah, most players in that market, especially the consumers of energy, have very little say when it comes to pricing of energy. In fact, EPRA will just come up one day and tell you that you've adjusted the cost to this price, which sometimes doesn't augur well with the market or with the consumers as it were. So I would want, even as it is today, Elijah.
Yes.
Still, we can work within the space or within the environment to ensure that the cost at which we are sold energy is palatable in the market. I would expect that before EPRA advertises their new cost,
yes,
they have consulted the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. They have consulted the Consumer Federation of Kenya, so that they come up with something that is workable across board. Remember, our aim as an economy is to grow into a strong middle income economy. I think by year 2030, and energy plays a very key role in that blueprint. or in that growth forecast. So I think that is something that should not be taken lightly. It is something that has to be addressed by all stakeholders in that space, Elijah.
Yes. And now, just George, just before we get out of this topic this morning, I want to maybe we have to look at that area as well. I want to take you back to 2019, 2020, so we can look at actually what was KRA's biggest revenue composition and the ones that actually took the greatest hit again. Which, if you can actually show me that data that we've been showing this morning in terms of KRA's revenue composition, you're going to see that under the areas that had a bigger decline, we also had fuel levy, which was also one of those areas that we were actually reeling so much in terms of what was taking a bigger hit, in terms of what was sort of making KRA's revenue. And if you look at that, George, we're starting 2021 as well, and they're saying, well, I mean, we have to rectify that. Do you read some sort of mischief, George, in that composition? Because if fuel tax was one of those areas that were getting a bigger hit, are they trying to get something out of it as we start 2021?
I think, Elijah, KRA is between a rock and a hard place. Remember,
Yes.
2019, 2020, they collected very little in terms of revenue. And in fact, when I refer specifically to fuel levy, there's a time, I think, between March and I think August, that there was very little activity in the market. Remember, travel was cancelled. There was no air traffic. There was no road traffic. And most of this affected the revenue collection by the taxman, as it were.
Yes.
And when these measures were relaxed in the year 2021 now, I think probably KRA or the government in its planning or strategy session would have pointed towards organizations. Coming up with strategies to just jumpstart the operations or the economy before before levying some of these heavy taxes on the operators. But much as it were, Elijah, remember, we were short of a revenue collection in 2019, 2020, and I think KRA is just trying to do the much that they can to plug some of those holes. So I think it is a dicey situation, or it is a catch-22 for the taxman. They want to raise as much revenue as they can within this year, but again, is the economy good enough, or is the economy responsive to their measures? I think that is something that that should be looked at from the economic side as well as from the tax side, so that the two we can have a compromise between the two, Elijah.
Pretty much. All right. I beg that we move on to the next issue this morning. And at this point, I want to bring in Adelaide and Washington, who are going to take us on to the next one. Now, COVID-19 induced economic depression saw a sharp rise in insurance policy cancellations and withdrawals by nearly a third in the 6 months to June last year, after most customers failed to keep up with the premium payments. Now, the latest data by the Insurance Regulatory Authority, IRA, indicates the policy surrenders rose by 26%. Now, wait for it, to 5.33 billion from 4.22 billion recorded in the similar period a year ago. Insurers have attributed the rise in withdrawals and surrender majorly in life assurance and pension products to the COVID-19 pandemic that heavily affected economic activities that saw revenue falls, job losses and salary cuts across sectors. Now, the review period indicated that the number of loans drawn against insurance policies jumped by 3.7% to 2.75 billion shillings in the review period, highlighting the increased demand for cash. Surrenders led in pension businesses where 3.55 billion was withdrawn, followed by life assurance products that was 997.94 million and 775.78 million shillings from investment products. Wow. That's the numbers this morning. And Adelaide, I want to read now for you. And my first question is going to be this. It's 2021. We've just started the year. Do we expect that this trend is going to continue? Or, as everybody said, we are optimistic for a better 2021? Adelaide, could you unmute your audio?
Sorry about that.
All right.
I
we'll
think
get you now.
optimism is really anticipated because we have seen that cutting across Africa, the impact of COVID-19 has not been very extreme as has been in some of the developed nations like Italy, the US, etc.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that, that doesn't mean that we have not been affected, or rather. But what we think is there's going to be optimism in improvement within insurance. There is definitely a lot more awareness, despite the impact of despite the impact in people's economic status, in the sense that we have had a significant number of people losing jobs. We know that majority of our population, in as much as we are very young, we also have a significant degree of unemployment. So the impact of uptake is not expected to surge. For anything, we expect to start having we need to significantly, as insurers, specifically smaller insurers, to start putting in mitigation measures in the medium term and long term. So we have to start having a more of a 3-year, 5-year approach into the analysis and the projections,
Yes,
to be able to see what is the avalanche effect of this pandemic long term. Despite the fact that as a continent or as a country, the impact has not been extremely dire.
pretty much. I'm going to come back to you, Adelaide, so we can actually look at these classes that have taken the bigger hit. But just before we do that, Washington, good morning. And my first question for you is going to be, do we expect that this trend of policy withdrawals and surrender is going to continue in 2021, or you're optimistic that things are going to change?
Well, good morning, everyone. Now,
Good morning.
It's been a bad season for the insurance sector.
Yes.
And of course, just like Adelaide is saying, it's all a matter of the slowdown in the economy because of COVID-19 really affected the insurance industry. And I think I talked about that sometime last year, that this is an industry that is going to be most hit as far as the economic slowdown is concerned. And you see, as we speak, when you talk about people surrendering their policies, people not being able to continue paying for the insurance policies, because at the end of the day, insurance, especially in Africa, is more of a luxury good than anything else, apart from the compulsory insurance, for example, like in motor. But you see, and that's why we talk about things like life insurance, pensions, investment linked policies. Those are the ones basically that are coming down, or rather that people are getting away from. But things like motor insurance, I can assure you, especially the compulsory third-party cover, it's still being taken up, because that one is a necessity if you need to have your car on the road.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean people are not still buying cars. People are still buying cars. But the point is, at what importance do people attach the value, or do they really value insurance for it to actually tighten the belt and continue paying? This, of course, has also not been helped by the state of the insurance industry in Kenya. The fact that you always have to keep on struggling to pay claims, the fact that there are companies shutting down every day with people's monies, that does not help anyone. So at the end of the day, who can talk for the insurance industry, so to speak? Who can talk to these people to make them not surrender their policies, to make them continue paying? Because I can guarantee you, usually when you take up an insurance policy, you take up what you can pay every month or annual, so to speak. And it's usually a comfortable figure, let me say, because you cannot take, for example, a monthly cover that can really stress your finances. To a certain extent, you can actually tighten the belt and continue paying if you see the value of it. But if you don't see the value, or rather, if you have an ish kind of thinking towards insurance, the first thing that you cut down from your budget is actually insurance coverage.
Yes.
No? And so, like I've just actually talked for the insurance industry to make sure that this trend doesn't continue. And so, going forward, is it really possible that insurance actually, there's going to be an uptake of insurance in this country? I don't think so, unless the economy improves in such a way that people will find it important to buy insurance, not to maintain the current insurance covers, but to get new clients into the insurance industry.
Yes.
Do we have that kind of commitment from the insuring public or from potential prospects to actually take up insurance as the economy improves? As much as we know, the improvement of the economy in this country will not be very, very, very slow. Of course, we know what is happening in this economic sector in Kenya. The fact there is, actually, as we speak right now, for the fact there's so much corruption in this country, for the fact that things like billions have been stolen because of the coronavirus pandemic, I don't think things will be so bad. I don't think so.
Yes.
For things to really improve, Elijah, I think we really need a turnaround in everything, in the kind of the economic environment has to be improved for people to really get value for the economic activities that they are doing.
Yes. Yes. All right, Adelaide, let me bring you in on that as well. Let's look at the classes that were really affected when we're talking about the insurance products. All right, let's get into it then, because under this, we're talking about surrenders are the ones that actually led in the pension business, where 3.55 billion was withdrawn, followed by life assurance products by 997.94 million and 775.78 from investment products. Can we make sense of that data, Adelaide, this morning? What does it mean to you when pension business gets the biggest hit and also investment business as well gets the biggest hit, especially when we're talking about withdrawals and surrenders? Who is this who's taking this money back?
This is the most obvious kind of response to when an economy is oppressed or suppressed.
Yes.
The fact is, you get the number of retrenchments, you get the number of job redundancies going up. So you'll find that the demand for withdrawal out of pension funds, the agreed amount of withdrawals out of pension funds, of course, will skyrocket. You will find that most people who were actually employed and had compulsory or they were adding their own compulsory pension funds, they'll have to put that to a stop immediately. I will speak from a personal level. As an organization, we did have compulsory contributions, and most of my team were like, let's slash down the contributions I'm making to my pension fund so that I can be able to adjust my my expenses daily out of those payments. So pension funds, the data and statistics is really, really factual. Once the economy is affected as it was, people will definitely withdraw. Those who were had actually contributed to their personal pension funds will also withdraw from those because the government can facilitate those kind of payments. When it comes to life insurance policies, the surrender values, those who have contributed for 2 years and above, you will find that the pressure to be able to continue with their premium contributions is too high. You will find that they will actually even go and seek loans against their benefits to be able to cushion for the economic gaps that they're experiencing due to maybe salary decreases or retrenchments and expiration.
Yes.
So yes, the two very obvious kind of impacts will be pensions and life business. So the statistics is very ripe. You can see there's been an increase from last year. Surrenders are much, much higher. And of course, most people could not be able to afford. Most people, not even just the fact that they couldn't afford. The effects that kids were out of school for almost a year brought in a lot of disillusionment about how people are going to face academic, how the education system is going to change. Most people who are still in employment had taken life insurance schemes. They were thinking a lot of the schools have actually changed to online learning. Does this mean that the tuition fees will reduce significantly? So my projections to take my child in class 8 or Form 1, where I had projected maybe 1 million shillings, 2 million shillings, does that mean that the futuristic approach to these endowment schemes are actually changing? So there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of family renegotiation in regards to the needs of the family when it comes to education policies. And that's why you saw some people even surrendered. They surrendered in the sense that they did not want to continue paying those policies. Many people were not sure how the education systems and the policies would run. And those who are perhaps retrenched took loans vis-a-vis their life policies. So yes, the data is very, very, very accurate in regards to how the economic impact of COVID was facing most families.
Yes, I'll beg we take a short break. Once we come back, Washington and Adelaide, my question is going to be for you therefore. Now, the regulator has done exactly how your industry has been hit. 5.33 billion, and we're not speculating that things are going to change anytime soon again in 2021 because when we are sort of trying to recover. What sort of regulatory response do we expect from your regulator when it comes to such kind of headlines? Once we come back here on Business AM 2146, your SMS line at Metropole TVKE across all your social media platforms. Join us. #BusinessAM.